The morning they showcased my code without me, I had no idea it was even happening. I was sitting 2 floors below, cradling my third cup of burnt office coffee, finishing the final lines of the StratusFlow predictive logic model. The model I'd built alone from the ground up. Every line of code was a battle against fatigue and wrist pain. I'd been pulling 16-hour shifts for weeks, dozing next to my laptop like it was on life support, surviving on granola bars that tasted like regret, and dreaming in Python. Meanwhile, somewhere upstairs behind glossy glass doors and smug grins, Trevor and Ken were parading my work like it was theirs. I didn't hear it from them, of course. It came from Ava, the new intern, soft-spoken, always polite. She mumbled, "Didn't they tell you you'd be in the pitch? It's happening now." She pulled up a live feed from the main conference room. And there they were. My manager, Trevor Greasy Charm, and a spray-on smile presenting StratusFlow like it was a slide deck he threw together during lunch. Ken stood in the background, nodding like a bobblehead in a beige suit. Oh, and while we're here, if this story hits a nerve, consider tapping that subscribe button and tossing a like our way. No pressure, but 97% of viewers forget to do that. It means more to us than all the espresso in Silicon Valley. Back to the backstab. StratusFlow wasn't some novelty app for ordering coffee with emojis. It was a machine learning-powered productivity engine designed to adapt to team behavior in real time. It could reassign tasks, flag inefficiencies, even detect burnout patterns. It was built to make a Fortune 500 company feel agile again. I didn't just code it, I lived it. That system was my sleepless nights wrapped in logic and syntax. But around week 3, things started getting strange. Trevor began tossing around phrases like, "We'll take it from here," and "let's present a unified voice." I thought he meant the whole team. Spoiler alert, he meant himself and Ken. He stopped CCing me on client updates. He'd chuckle and say Marissa's great with the back-end stuff, but she's not really a closer. And when he did include me, it was to ask if I could whip up a few bullet points for his deck. Like I was his assistant with a PhD in systems engineering. I should have trusted my instincts. That creeping voice in my head whispering, "They're cutting you out." But I kept pushing it down. Told myself I was overthinking. Just tired. But real teamwork doesn't include being locked out of your own launch. Getting iced out of your own brainchild hits differently. That morning, as I sat at my desk on the 3rd floor of a gray brick office in Boulder, Colorado, I watched the live stream with silent disbelief. Trevor was mispronouncing function names I'd personally embedded into StratusFlow's core framework. Something in me didn't explode, it froze. It was the kind of cold you feel before a storm, sharp, still, and merciless. I watched him stumble through my interface with the grace of someone swiping a tablet in a blackout. And as the anger settled low in my gut, familiar and ancient, I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I started planning. That's when the first mental match dropped. I didn't know it yet, but the blaze was coming. The signs showed up in small ways. Trevor's office door had a slow, dramatic creak when it shut. Lately, it had been slamming more often, mostly behind Ken, our ever-aloof regional VP. Each thud felt like a punctuation mark in a conversation I was no longer part of. Something was shifting, and it reeked of cologne-burnt coffee and carefully staged betrayal. The big StratusFlow presentation to a potential enterprise partner, Global Net Systems, was only a week away. It should have been our defining moment. My defining moment. But suddenly, I was left out of rehearsals, not invited to planning calls, ignored in Slack threads, where I used to be tagged daily. Trevor started treating StratusFlow like he designed it over lunch with crayons, as if I hadn't spent 6 months running regression models in my sleep just to get the adaptive prioritization module running. I asked, trying to sound casual, "Need anything final from me for the deck?" "Oh yeah, good call," he replied, barely glancing up from his phone. Just a quick doc outlining the back-end logic, maybe 2 versions to back it up for ops. Ops didn't even know what StratusFlow was last quarter. So I pressed gently. "For internal use or client-facing?" He blinked. "Both. Either just, covering bases." That's when he did his tell, rubbing the side of his nose like he was trying to erase his own face. Red flag number 37. Then Ken chimed in with an email. Later that day, let's also grab a full repo export just in case things go sideways during the pitch. Rollback. Since when did Ken know GitHub from Google Docs? That's when it hit me. A low, queasy twist in my stomach that whispered, they're boxing you out. Not with confrontation, but with carefully worded requests. Not knives, paper cuts. They weren't just pushing me aside. They were scrubbing my name out of my own creation. I gave it one last shot that Thursday afternoon. Found Trevor standing by the Keurig staring blankly like a ghost haunting a break room. Hey, do we want to run through the demo flow together? Before next week? I asked casually. I can fine-tune the UX a bit more if I know exactly what you're planning to present. He blinked, startled, like he'd forgotten I still worked there. Oh, right. Yeah. Actually, we're thinking of going with a higher-level overview. Less technical, more storytelling. Ken's big on keeping it executive-friendly. I stood there blinking at him over a lukewarm hazelnut brew pod, finally understanding what he was saying without saying it. They didn't need me for the pitch, because they weren't planning to mention me in the pitch. StratusFlow was never ours in their eyes. It was a trophy. I was just the one who polished it. By Friday, they started requesting every asset I had. Test environments, UI mock-ups, back-end, flowcharts, even my internal documentation templates. All under the friendly little umbrella of backup purposes. I zipped everything up, not because I trusted them, but because I needed them to think I was still cooperating. I named the folder Final StratusFlow Backup. What they didn't know was that the real final version, the one with the feature they said was too niche for enterprise clients, was safely stored offline. That feature? It would blow the client's mind. They could take my files, but they didn't have my mind. And more importantly, they didn't have the version that mattered. I had a growing certainty that this whole thing was about to combust. The energy in the office was sour and sharp. The air smelled like printer toner and panic. The conference room they summoned me to on Monday morning looked like a bad decision wearing beige paint. No windows, no art. A dying ficus wilted in the corner like it had seen things and lost all hope. If you felt that shift, the moment everything changed, hit that subscribe button, because what happens next doesn't just settle the score, it rewrites the rules. At first I thought maybe it was compliance training or Trevor wanting another rewrite of his slides. Then I saw the box. Cardboard. Standard issue. 2 handle cutouts. One size fits all. Endings. Trevor and Ken were already seated. Neither met my eyes. Ken gave a stiff nod like he was saying goodbye to an underperforming appliance. The HR rep attempt with a shaky smile and a clipboard cleared her throat. Marissa, as of today, your position has been impacted by organizational restructuring. I didn't hear the rest. My ears filled with static heartbeat and fury. Restructuring. That's the word they chose. Just corporate feng shui. Shift the chairs, and somehow I ended up in the fire. Trevor finally chimed in. It's nothing personal. Really? This doesn't reflect your technical skills. Right? Just my existence. And then Trevor did it that smirk. That slow, greasy curl of his lip, like he just stepped over something beneath him. We just felt your contributions to StratusFlow were, let's say, a little unfocused. Maybe you weren't quite ready for the final push. Unfocused. I wanted to grab the half-empty coffee mug in front of me and shatter it against the whiteboard. This man had just pitched my prototype using my code while I was 2 floors down, refining the exact feature he told me was too experimental. But I didn't blink, because something had already shifted in me, something colder than grief, sharper than shame. It was clarity. Clean, ruthless clarity. This wasn't about performance. It wasn't about team alignment or company restructuring. This was a corporate theft. A calculated, rehearsed heist. They didn't need me anymore because they thought they had me. The code, the diagrams, the scripts. They thought they'd buried me quietly and were already carving up the remains. The HR rep handed me the cardboard box like she was giving me a poncho in a hurricane. We'll walk you to your desk so you can gather your personal items, she said, voice clipped and falsely sweet. I didn't need to gather anything. I already knew what I was taking and what I was leaving behind. I walked out holding the box in one hand and my dignity in the other. And somewhere in that silent, soulless hallway, I made myself a promise. You want a final push, Trevor? Fine. But it won't happen on your stage. It'll happen on the ashes of your ego, and you won't even see it coming because it's already in motion. That first night, I didn't sleep. I lay on my back in my dark apartment, eyes locked on the ceiling like maybe rage alone could punch through concrete and rewrite fate. I kept seeing that smug smirk, that slow, smirking eulogy of my career, unfocused, unprepared. The words looped in my head, decaying into what they really were: lies built from stolen credit, grief hid in waves. I thought about my real team, the junior devs I mentored, the QA folks who stayed late with me eating gas station pizza. I thought of all the weekends I skipped with my sister just to rework a sprint nobody else understood. All so a walking necktie could put me in a cardboard coffin and take my invention to prom. But then something shifted, like chemicals colliding. The sorrow thickened, hardened, turned to fuel. At 4:12 a.m., I brewed the strongest coffee legal in Colorado, opened my laptop, and launched the real build. Not the stripped-down version they stole. The real StratusFlow. Mine. It was the version with the adaptive prioritization engine, the one that learned from team behavior in real time. The version I never pushed to production, because Trevor had said, let's keep it simple for the client. The version that still had my fingerprints encrypted across every file, time-stamped and sealed with a private key I buried so deep it might as well have been in a digital cave in Narnia. And then I remembered her, Sarah Chen, CTO of Innovate Corp. We met 6 months ago at a mind-numbing tech summit in San Diego. Both of us had ducked out halfway through a painfully dull keynote and ended up in the hotel bar line. I'd ordered a whiskey at 11 a.m., You must be one of the real engineers, she'd said with a dry laugh. Later, we chatted about StratusFlow. I'd mentioned the early struggles, scalability, user adoption, machine learning constraints. She listened, then said something that stuck with me ever since. If your team ever stops listening, come find me. At the time, I thought it was just a kindness, a polite gesture from someone too senior to owe me anything. But now it sounded like a flare in the night sky. I tore through my old inbox, buried under thousands of unread LinkedIn pings and corporate spam. Found her card. I typed one line in the subject: the StratusFlow you're about to see is a pale imitation. The email body was just one sentence: I have the genuine article. I hovered for a full 5 minutes before hitting send. My heart thundered like I was handling explosives. In a way, I was. Then I opened a new tab and got to work. Registered a domain, filed for an EIN, used what was left of my savings to expedite the LLC paperwork. I named it Phoenix Solutions because I wasn't just returning. I was rising from the wreckage, from the ash of every erased meeting invite and stolen credit. By sunrise, Phoenix Solutions was alive, barely crawling, fueled by rage, caffeine, and sleepless nights but mine. A one-woman rebellion with no investors, no legacy clients, just a brilliant prototype and nothing to lose. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was proof. I was StratusFlow, and they had just made the worst decision of their careers. 7 hours and 12 minutes later, her reply came. Subject: tomorrow. 8:00 a.m. Atrium Cafe. 15 minutes. No emojis, no fluff. Just coordinates and a deadline. A second chance, carved out of curiosity and fire. 15 minutes. That's all I had to prove. This wasn't some Frankenstein of corporate slide decks, but a living, breathing system. So I shut out the world and went to war. 36 hours. Vanished in a blur of Red Bull cans, crumpled food wrappers, and furious, glorious code. I didn't just polish StratusFlow. I weaponized it. First, I resurrected the dynamic behavioral modulator, the feature Trevor dismissed as too gimmicky. Too granular, he said. Clients want dashboards, not diagnostics, but that was the point. This wasn't about flashy UI, it was about foresight. That module let StratusFlow learn how teams operated and adapt in real time. It could spot workflow bottlenecks before they formed, detect burnout trends, redirect priorities before entire departments derailed. Trevor thought it was fluff. I knew it was the soul of the entire system. So I rewired it, fed it a fresh dataset, retrained every branch of its logic engine until it pulsed with predictive intelligence. Then I gutted the UX. Every bloated tooltip, every corporate-approved low-contrast template Ken ever forced on me, gone. I redesigned the interface like I was building it for Sarah Chen herself. Streamlined, responsive, beautiful in its clarity, a UI that moved as fast as she thought. By the 30th hour, my body was giving out. My fingers were stiff. My vision doubled. But I couldn't stop. I wasn't just coding anymore, I was testifying. Every line of code whispered I was never unprepared. At 3:12 a.m., the morning of the meeting, I ran the final build. No bugs, no memory leaks, no crashes. It was perfect. No, I was perfect. I printed a tight summary packet. No fluff. Just logic outcomes and a future roadmap. Slipped it into a black folder so sharp it looked like it could cut marble. I closed the laptop and stared into the silence of my apartment. The fridge hummed like background applause. 50 minutes to go. I wasn't Marissa the team player anymore. I was Marissa Langley, founder and CEO of Phoenix Solutions. And I had just built the prototype they never saw coming. The Atrium Cafe was half full when I arrived. Warm lights, soft jazz, baristas who didn't care if your life was unraveling so long as you tipped. I walked in wearing the only blazer I owned, still carrying a faint scent of mothballs and memory. My hands shook. Not from fear, no, it was adrenaline rage and 36 hours of straight combat with code. Sarah Chen was already there. Black turtleneck, no makeup. Sipping her espresso like it was a court summons. She looked up once, expression unreadable, and nodded toward the chair across from her. I sat. My knees felt like overcooked spaghetti. I slid the black folder across the table. She didn't touch it. I'm giving you exactly 15 minutes, she said flatly. Start talking. So I did. But I didn't waste a second on Trevor or Ken or the HR room that smelled like printer paper and quiet betrayal. I didn't need to rehash the betrayal that wasn't the pitch. That would have been small, petty. And this moment deserved more. So instead, I opened my laptop. The interface came alive right there in that little cafe, StratusFlow, glowing like it had a heartbeat on my screen. Every detail precise, every animation clean, every logic branch humming like a tuned engine. This was never meant for boardrooms or buzzwords. This was for builders. I walked her through the adaptive module. Sarah leaned in, narrowing her eyes. Wait, she said, slowly. Is this real-time team behavior modeling? Yes, I nodded. It learns not just workflow, but stress indicators. Communication drift, even emotional labor. It recalibrates automatically without disrupting velocity. Her espresso went untouched from that point forward. I moved into the back-end demo. Showed her how StratusFlow could identify a sudden drop in code pushes and reroute QA to onboarding support, preventing backlog before it started. Showed how it detected misaligned meeting loads for middle managers and recommended synchronous task swaps to preserve momentum. She asked questions. Sharp, technical, rooted in experience, the kind that only come from someone who's written more code than strategy memos. I answered each one. Direct. No filler. No jargon. I didn't mention Trevor or Ken once. Because this wasn't about who tried to erase me. It was about who they underestimated. When the clock hit 8:15, Sarah didn't move. By 8:40, she was sketching feature breakdowns in the margins of my printout. By 9 a.m., her phone was face down and stone silent. And the espresso was cold. When it finally ended, she studied me like she was recalibrating her own systems. Then she gently closed my laptop and tapped the black folder I'd slid across the table an hour earlier. I'll be honest, she said, voice calm. I thought this would be noise, personal drama. But this? She looked directly at me. This is clarity. I didn't smile. I didn't have anything left for victory laps. She slung her coat over one arm. You should leave the building before they arrive. No need for awkward introductions. And just like that, she was gone. I sat there for a moment, heart finally steady, hands calm. Then I packed up in silence. As I stepped into the crisp, bolder morning, something new settled over me. Not fear, not pride, consequence. Because I hadn't just made a pitch. I'd declared war. Not with fire. Not with lawsuits. With truth. And truth doesn't ask permission. It waits in silence until someone bleeds. I wasn't afraid of the cost, because I knew exactly who was about to pay it. I walked out like I'd just survived a storm made of syntax and caffeine, and every nerve in me was still burning. My blazer clung to my skin like a second sweat-soaked spine, and my feet throbbed with that deep, bone-level ache you only get from standing on principle for too damn long. I held my laptop like a weapon, because that's exactly what it had become. The lobby of Innovate Corp was all brushed aluminum, overpriced succulents, and that strange hush reserved for buildings where multi-million-dollar decisions are made over flavored, sparkling water. I was halfway to the revolving door when I saw them. Trevor and Ken, striding in like they'd invented gravity. Trevor wore his I just sailed in from a board retreat blazer and carried that ridiculous leather folio he treated like it contained ancient secrets. Ken trailed a few steps behind, whispering into his phone, probably cycling through a word salad of synergy, pipeline clarity, and vision alignment. And then Trevor saw me. He slowed, blinked. His face twitched somewhere between confused and smug with a pinch of suspicion. The kind of look you give a raccoon that somehow opened your fridge and figured out the ice dispenser. Well, he said, stopping just short of too close. Didn't think they let spectators in this early. I didn't flinch. He smirked. Couldn't stay away, huh? I smiled. Not big, not sarcastic. Just that tiny surgical grin that doesn't reach the eyes, but still manages to whisper, "You're already dead. You just haven't hit the floor yet." And I walked right past them, calm as a loaded gun. I took a seat on one of those modern lobby chairs, more sculpture than furniture, and pulled out my phone. Opened Slack. Scrolled through. Absolutely nothing. Trevor hesitated. I felt it, that momentary glitch in his stride, that flicker of uncertainty crawling up his spine like a cold spider. But he shoved it down. Of course he did. Narcissists are pros at pretending they're still winning long after the fall has begun. I looked up once, watched them saunter to the security desk like they were checking into a luxury hotel. Trevor leaned against the counter cologne, thick as ego, while Ken fumbled with his badge like someone was about to applaud. I sat just 10 feet away, scrolling idle screens with the stillness of a sniper. The receptionist answered a call, her voice polite, but clipped. Then, something changed. She asked them to wait twice. Trevor gave one of those fake CEO laughs, thin, performative, hollow. The kind that signals patience he doesn't actually have. And the kind you only hear right before the ground gives way. Trevor's knuckles tightened around the leather folio like it might shield him from what was coming. Ken checked his watch. Twice. Another call. Then another. But security didn't wave them through. I watched it unfold like theater, slow, precise, and completely unavoidable. Trevor started pacing, whispering frantically into his phone. Ken pulled out his tablet, tapping at it, like maybe he could type his way out of the embarrassment building around him. Then she arrived. A woman in a tailored navy suit, tablet in hand, eyes like polished stone. You could tell by her posture she didn't ask questions, she delivered decisions. High-level executive assistant, no doubt. She approached them, heels echoing with authority, and said loud enough for half the lobby to hear, "Gentlemen, the presentation with your team has been indefinitely postponed." The silence that followed cracked the air like glass. Trevor blinked. Ken stepped forward, voice pitched tight. "There must be some mistake. We're scheduled." She raised a hand, clean firm like a referee ending the game. "There's no mistake. You've been notified. If you'd like to reschedule, please go through your representative." Trevor's mouth opened, then closed again. His face folded inward like he was aging by the second. His jaw clenched so hard I thought something might snap. Ken looked like someone had just torched his retirement plan in front of him. And me, I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just watched. That moment wasn't just satisfying, it was surgical. Every passive-aggressive email, every time they erased me from my own work, every condescending remark disguised as collaboration, it all came crashing down on their shoulders in one perfectly public humiliation. I felt something shift inside me, something old, something heavy. The last fragment of the version of me who asked for permission, who waited to be seen. She was gone, and in her place stood someone colder, smarter, more dangerous, a builder, a founder, a competitor. Then my phone buzzed. Sarah Chen. My office. Now. Let's talk numbers. I stood slowly, deliberate. Walked past Trevor and Ken without a word. Trevor saw me. And this time, he understood. His eyes lit up with fury and panic all at once, like the pieces had finally clicked. He opened his mouth, but I didn't stop, didn't flinch, didn't look back. Because I was done playing their game. Now, they were on my turf. The boardroom at Innovate Corp felt like a high-security vault glass steel silence. Leather chairs, frosted panels. A tray of untouched pastries no one trusted. Across from me sat Sarah, cool and calm, flanked by two legal pros with polished pens and steel gazes. It was time. The contract folder lay open in front of me, thick with clauses, polished legalese, and a number so large it made my vision blur for a second. 25 million. For development integration, support a multi-year partnership that would make Phoenix Solutions the official optimization provider for Innovate Corp. And I was the one signing it. Not Trevor, not Ken. Me. Sarah slid a Mont Blanc pen across the table. Unless you'd prefer something else, she asked. I took a breath. Dead pen I've used worse. My fingers trembled just slightly as I reached for it. Then my phone buzzed. Once, twice. Urgent like panic tapping out Morse code. I glanced down. Ken M. What did you do? This is sabotage. You'll be hearing from our legal team. I stared at the message. Let it sink in like cheap whiskey on an empty stomach. Sabotage. From the same man who erased my name, stole my code, and handed me a cardboard box with a fake smile. Now, he was spiraling, trying to reclaim something he never built. I didn't respond. Instead, I tilted the screen towards Sarah. She picked it up, read the message, and let out the sharpest laugh I've ever heard in a boardroom. Well, she said, handing it back, that explains the 20 missed calls to reception. Even the lawyer to her left smirked. Another one snorted before regaining composure. I picked up the pen, paused. One last glance at the name printed across the top of the folder. Phoenix Solutions, LLC. Not Marissa, the good soldier. Not Marissa, the invisible engineer. Marissa Langley, founder. And then I signed. With that stroke, I didn't just close a deal. I closed the chapter they tried to write without me. I salted the ground behind me so thoroughly not even their buzzwords could sprout. No farewell emails. No staged photo ops. No handshake over the ashes. Just a signature. A sealed contract. And a reckoning they'd never see coming. When I walked out of that building, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. They'd spend years combing through the wreckage, trying to figure out how they lost everything they thought they'd already won. And me? I had work to do, a war to build, and 25 million reasons to never sit quietly in a windowless room again. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. If you made it this far, thank you for listening, for staying, for witnessing what they tried to bury. I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Tell me what part of this story hit home. Maybe you've been in a similar place, overlooked, underestimated, boxed out by people who smiled to your face and stole your work behind closed doors. I know what that silence feels like. I also know the power that comes when you stop asking for permission to exist. So tell me, what would you have done in my shoes? What have you done when life pushed you out of the room you built? Your words might be the push someone else needs today. And if you take anything from my story, let it be this. Your value is not defined by a title, a badge swipe, or someone else's approval. You don't need a seat at their table if you can build your own. So speak up, build boldly, and never ever let a fool in a blazer tell you your fire is unfocused. Like, comment, share with someone who needs to hear this. And if you're with me, subscribe, because this war is just getting started.